Greetings, Earthbound Travelers. Welcome to today's episode of Will of the Dice Presents Cast Guidance. I'm Tier the DM, the world's okayest DM. And today is a very special show because we got some special people. Locke is not with us, unfortunately, in real life. He hates that he's missing these two. But I have with us Pat and Lee. They are the creators of an epic sci-fi TTRPG called Changed Stars. Thank you guys so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. Oh my gosh. It's been a while since we've come to one of these things.
Well, we here at Cast Guidance like to talk about world building and rules minutia and all that. And I had talked with Lee about coming on, and finally got to have guests. So yay!
Yay.
Before we
Woo!
get started, the normal disclaimers we are for mature audiences. If you're not mature audiences, GTFO. If you don't know what GTFO is, RTFM. So thank you seriously, guys, so much for being here. The first question that I have, y'all can answer tag team. However, what inspired one of the most epic sci-fi games that I have played, Changed Stars?
That is definitely a Pat question, I feel.
All right, okay. So let me get into the story here. Um so Change Stars is was inspired by my Sunday group needing something to play when Lee was not available to be the perpetual GM for the group. Uh Basically, I wanted to play this new game that I'd found called Alien RPG, which, I love on account of I'm a huge fan of the franchise. But it appeared that nobody in the group either enjoyed or knew of Alien, the franchise, to quite the extent that I did. And nobody actually wanted to play Alien RPG. But I still really wanted to play it. So I did something a little tricksy. I said, we're going to use these rules, but I'm going to make my own little setting for it. And this will just be a fun one shot. And I'll familiarize myself with the rules. And we can forget about it after this. And then I gave a poll to the group to see what sort of setting we'd be playing in. Because the setting is always important to me. One of my friends in this group was very insistent that I didn't really need to pay that much attention to the setting if my premise for the episode was your spaceship crashes on a deserted planet. But I disagreed. I think the setting's always important. So I gave them a poll, and there was a number of things on the poll, and ultimately the results of the poll led to the creation of Change Stars, the setting. Like I think we chose a number of things. I asked them like, what's the general political milieu? Who's in control of the stars? And I gave them a bunch of options, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Ultimately, we came upon the decision that this setting was to be a coalition government between several different species of the same region in space, and humanity was under the control of a benevolent AI who directed stuff and things throughout the realm. Um, and we chose a number of other different topics, and ultimately we came around to something that was very distinctly not alien. Enough that I could play the system, and it turned out that everybody really enjoyed the setting a lot, and I fell in love with it too. And I decided to run the same one shot on Change Stars, or on Diesel Shot, sorry, our Twitch stream. And ultimately, I just started doing more of it and more and more. And the world started building, expanding exponentially, like the cosmos itself. And here we are today.
Awesome. So it was born out of a desire to play an RPG. Very
Yes, it was
cool.
born out of a desire to play a game with friends. And it was very much a game for the group. It was a setting that I figured we would enjoy because there's a lot of banal dystopian sci-fi and um, pseudo-fascistic marine-loving sci-fi and all that sort of jazz. But I wanted something unique and different that the table I was playing for could find. comfortable and interesting. So inspiration wise, I have a lot of different outside sources that I drew upon. But Change Stars was in many ways uh, as inspired by things it seeks to emulate as it was inspired by inverting tropes that I did not like and or like but find excessive. Um, in the sci-fi genre. So it's both inspired by being feminist sci-fi in the vein of like Left Hand of Darkness and other things that make you think about uh, gender and how we interact with it and such. So that's a positive inspiration, right? But then there's also a number of things that it really aspires not to be, which is to say, Change Stars does not seek to emulate or extol the Heinleinian vein of, meritocratic military worship and such. We really, in the beginning, it was definitely conceived of as both certain things, but very strongly not some things that we didn't want to play with. So yeah,
I mean,
that's
in a sense, we do play with it. Like the history of these species interacting does kick off with the bug war. It's just that doesn't. It's not the conclusion that you see in Starship Troopers.
exactly. The um, elements are in play, but the outcomes are uh, unique to the setting, and kind of snarkily inverted from expectations.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So we've already got a question in the audience. Usually it takes them about 30 minutes to warm up. They want to know why change stars for a title.
Because the stars have been changed. Ooh, but
Ooh, that is actually a great question. For uh, at least two reasons. One of the reasons is very literal, and one is more metaphorical. The literal answer to that is that in this setting, one thing that distinguishes it from our solar system, as far as we're aware at the moment, is that a long time ago, and by long time ago, I mean um, millennia, species have lived and died in the time that it's taken for this to transpire. But um, a precursor species known as contemporarily the Sunderers uh, drove through the Orion's arm in a trajectory towards the core of our solar system from presumably outside of the solar system. And all along the course that they took, they seeded stars for destruction, a couple million years later, in a fashion that would render them factories for heavy matter, which is the juiciest fuel in the Orion's arm for breaking physics. And um, these suns would eventually go supernova, conveniently or inconveniently, depending on where exactly the Sunderers are still in this equation, around 100 or around a couple hundred years ago. In the settings lore, stars started blinking out and becoming factories for heavy matter. And that was a huge boon to the rise of one of the factions in the setting, the Human Empire, that was kind of the awful Heinleinian nightmare state that fell a long while ago in this setting, because they just kind of jumped on this sudden influx of heavy matter to fuel their ships. But the Sunderers could still be out there. Anyway, that's part of the answer. The Sunderers literally changed the stars. The second half of the answer is more metaphorical and ties into the rise of the human empire, which is to say, humanity looked up when we were still tied to Earth's gravity for the most part, bound to these surly bonds. And we looked up at the stars and we thought, those are beautiful, shining beacons of resources for us to seize, and notches on our belt to take and to claim and dominate. Humanity dreamed of surging forth and conquering the stars, and for a while they did. However, this was not their future for the long-term affair, and while they might have viewed the stars as their manifest destiny, their future that they saw for themselves was quite drastically changed when they lost the war against the Allied forces that joined to stop them, and the human empire fell. And now humanity is playing nice with the species that they once fought a war against. It's been 150 years since, or well, 150 years since the start of the war. 100 years since the fall of the empire, and now humanity is in a coalition government and trying to heal and learn from the mistakes of the past and become better intergalactic community members. And that's the setting. The stars of humanity's hopes have changed as well.
Very cool. Very cool. I love that it has such a literal and such a non-literal deep meaning. That is some cool stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, very cool. So you all knew each other beforehand because you said you all were playing the same game. So when did the collaboration on this begin?
That's the Kickstarter was 1 year ago, so I guess it would have been 2 years that
Yeah.
the seed of thought of Change Stars as its own thing really
It was around
began.
this time. Yeah.
So
Because I was dating the girl who got me really hooked on the thermals at the time, and basically I listened to the thermals throughout the conception of Change Stars, and all of that was around the spring. So yeah, it's been about exactly 2 years now since Change Stars started being a thing. But even before that, Lee and I have known each other and been collaborating for about 3 to 4 years now. We met, we were Facebook friends and kind of just casual acquaintances until I invited Lee into a game I was hosting. It was a Dungeons and Dragons game set in the Underdark, very fun. I love the Drow. Um, so we were playing in a game for a couple months, then that sort of dissolved, but then I was invited into Lee's other actually no, wait, sorry. I think
no, yeah. So
before.
the thing is, I actually don't think that your Underdark game came before Spite. Did
No,
it?
it did, Lee. You're totally wrong in there. Yeah, no, I did not know you at all before the Underdark game. The Underdark game was first,
Yeah.
then we played that for a while, and you asked me, "Hey, do you want to start a Twitch channel?" And I said yes. Um,
Hmm.
and the game was concurrent with the start of Diesel Shot. But
Yeah.
basically, we were playing together for a couple months, and then Lee came to me and said, "Hey, we should go Dutch on a Twitch channel. You're fun as a GM. I know I'm great as a GM. I don't think I'd been GM'd by you until Spite though." Um, and yeah, we just we hit it off, and we started something together, and that was I think 3 years ago that we started really doing stuff. It was in the summer, and we started with a game that we hosted called Spite, and a year of friendship led to the results of me being the lead or the pretty much sole illustrator of stuff on Diesel Shot as a means to perfect my own art, and Lee as a means of making a living out of something Lee's good at, and we all, I mean, same here, uh, but we are all just working together on tabletop stuff now. So yeah,
Yeah.
Lee, I'm sure you could probably answer a little bit better. I'm a little
I
rambly.
mean,
Haven't
I
finished
mean, so yeah, there was no conversation about like anything other than me saying, "Hey, we should live stream a game," and Pat was like, "Oh, like video games? I wouldn't be very good at those." And then I explained to her that people live stream D&D. Um, but yeah, no, literally, I got really into this one song, "God Hunter" by the Aviators, and for some reason, it inspired me to run a campaign. but I had this feeling that it had to be a live stream Twitch game, and I had no audience established despite having published a game before. So we streamed it to like 1 to 0 viewers. So
not including ourselves, we had like 3 or 4 people in the.
I mean, yeah, that were us. But yeah, no, it was sort of a spur of the moment thing that wound up continually feeding. We played some more D&D. We did some other stuff. We collaborated before in other settings, but
Yeah,
a lot of
may
it
eventually
was
see some more love, but
yeah, a lot of it was just kind of whatever we were doing at the moment. We might do some D&D, we might do some alien RPG, and then when Changed Stars began to crystallize as something that we were taking seriously, there was a conversation about how far we were going to go with it versus other projects, and obviously we live in this time. Kickstarter, we have a whole game. It's a very thorough game. Where the document is at 300 pages, although, disclaimer for anybody listening in, the hardback can't be longer physically than 261, but those numbers are going to adjust when you put it into layout. But yeah, a huge game with all this lore and rules spawned basically from wanting to play a game. It's a setting that was invented with role-playing games in mind and with a specific session in mind, and that was more or less where we began and how I mean to go on. I think that we have a emphasis on how gameable the setting can be, in part because a lot of people's initial pushback is, well, if you have a more hopeful setting, and if the Trinity is a place where stuff is basically taken care of, then how is there any adventure? How does shit go wrong? Where's the conflict? Where am I going to wind up in a shootout, etc., etc.? Which I think we've pretty compellingly answered by now. Tier, of course, was here for a run of one of the only I don't normally repeat modules, but I do have one that I like to play called Hard Passage. We had a very fun run of it on Level Up Dice.
Yeah, honestly, I keep telling you, I feel like Hard Passage should be the back of the book adventure. We're now we have like 5 adventures that we're agonizing over. Which one's gonna be the back of the book? And Hard Passage isn't even on that list. I think it should be.
It doesn't quite do, because the back of the book adventure question is funny, isn't it? The back of the book adventure needs to encapsulate a for lack of a better word, vertical slice of potential scenarios and engagements. And while Hard Passage is a fun way to put a different group of people into a tight scenario and see how they react, it's not necessarily what I would consider archetypal,
Yeah,
archetypal
I know.
to the
here, because that is what sold me on Change Stars. So maybe you ought to reconsider, because playing that is what sold me. I am picky as hell. You ask anybody that knows me, especially when it comes to my gaming, and I have ordered my copy. So you may want to reconsider.
No, we'll definitely we're putting out Hard Passage one way or the other. It's a question of what the back of the book adventure is, but yeah. I mean, it definitely has a lot going for it. It puts you into a situation very quickly. Is like, hey, shit's going wrong. What are you going to do about that, buddy?
Mm-hmm. And I really do think it offers a good vertical slice of Changed Stars. Like, you've got your shitty human empire era tech ship that's got stuff going wrong on it. You've got your various factions inside. You got the frontier. You got the pirates. You got the whole 9 yards, in my opinion. And you can you can do some pre-generated characters to help people kind of like get a feel for, like, this is a Rast, this is a Thren, this is a human, this is a marshal, a pilot, et cetera, right? You could do all the fun things. Either way, I think this is maybe a conversation we should have elsewhere. But yeah, no, I think it's a good.
It's strong adventuring.
Yeah.
You can put a lot in Thren for life.
Yeah,
Thren for life. Woo! Hell yeah.
The Thren
Federation!
are a fun species, and we've got a lot. We've got a lot going on with the world building overall, with the options. I think that at the end of the day, a lot of sci-fi of this ilk rides and dies on the basis of their alien species to some extent. And I think that we wound up with a very solid package owing to Pat's background in art and biology, which helped her to conceive. Like, she has an explanation for why every species' blood is the color that it is.
Yes,
That's
I
awesome.
do. The Thren, in fact, are blue-blooded, and so are the
Rast.
The Rast, yeah. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Newsquai have that like silvery stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Thren have hemocyanin, which is a Thren and Rast as well. Have hemocyanin, which is a an alternative that you'll see quite frequently in, for instance, what are they called? The ancient crabs, uh, horseshoe crabs. Thank you. You'll see in horseshoe crabs and a lot of other species actually. It's the second most common aside from hemoglobin for transporting oxygen. I'll shut up.
Very cool.
Yeah, so as you can tell, she knows things about biology. I don't know anything about biology. I'm just like, the blood goes everywhere and you shot the guy. Oh, fuck. Like, I've also been accused of, in my my spaceship designs, of emphasizing, shall we say, ways things can go wrong rather than perhaps good health and safety practice. Thankfully, in Changed Stars, we have a lore explanation for that. The Human Empire built inefficient clunkers for most of the same reason that we do today, which is, like corporate interests who have gotten their contracts through backroom deals, general fuel inefficiency because we've hit upon a big glut of fuel, so we're not going to bother to develop. I mean, fuel logistics is mostly what loses the human empire the war. They were used to being along Sundra's Rift, a huge bit where there's lots of heavy matter. They were fighting a war where they weren't having that massive access to fuel. So unlike the other interstellar species, they haven't developed heavy matter recycling that's likely to keep some of their fuel in their tank. And that's actually reflected in the mechanics. If you run around in a Human Empire era vessel, which are still in service because ships stay in space for centuries in Changed Stars. They're incredibly complicated, hard to replace, and built to run for a very long time because of how long space travel takes.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to fix what isn't broken, and you only need to repair what is broken because you're not getting a new one most likely. So
also, since the war, the entire frontier region of the Orion's Arm is kind of in a bit of a crisis as their old ships are failing and a lot of them were lost during the war, and there's literally just logistical things that require ships, so they really couldn't take all these old clunkers off the roads, so to speak, because they fucking needed them.
Yeah, logistically they can't afford. But literally, you're in an era of history where you have the shiny new spaceships. Because the Artemisian commune, which is like roughly human space, has only been making new ships for the past 30 years. Mm-hmm. The war ended 100 years ago. There is a gap between, you're beginning to see some of these nice new ships, but overwhelmingly, you're putting up with either the crappy old stuff or a reproduction or a Rast production of the old vessels, because people know that a Barracuda is a freighter that does its job. So why get rid of it? Mm-hmm. We already have all of these these cargo modules designed for them. People know how to operate them. People know how to maintain them.
And it's not like they're expecting another war where fuel efficiency is gonna matter. No wars now. Peacetime. Trinity is saying stop war. Well,
yeah, a lot of the new ships coming out are designed to ensure that through big. I won't call it big stick diplomacy because that has lots of implications. But we too have warships, and we are the largest polity in Orion's Arm. So kindly do not.
Mm-hmm.
Please
but
de-escalate before we have to escalate.
yeah. Kindly de-escalate before we have to escalate you into an ethics shift like we did the Human Empire, which is a whole like hanging ethical question because, like, for example, one of the new ships is the Regina battleship. It has been built around a Reginald accelerator cannon, a massive accelerator cannon that like literally uses its because Human Empire ships and any ship can use its drive, especially its fast and light drive, to use heavy matter to generate gravity, right? And artificial gravity in a spaceship.
Mhm.
They literally use it to gravitationally accelerate the around in addition to the rail, the magnetized rail. And these things are huge ship killers. If you get clipped by them, you're dead. Like, literally, the base damage is 12. That is, like, the ship you were on in Hard Passage had, like, 13 hull points.
Damn.
Yeah, like, so these things are, I mean, it's an integral capital weapon. Like, you can't rig this. You have to have a ship built around it, and this is the only one. But people will ask, well, why the hell do we have this unless it's to threaten the brewing Cold War rival of the Raskin Federation? Because the Raskin Federation is entirely spaceborne, and they move in their Rast home ships. Now, by doctrine, the Trinity would never open fire on a home ship because it's full of civilians. That's literally where they live, right?
Yeah,
But one
that would
might
be
think twice
insanely
about
war criming.
tangling with a species with an entity rather that has weapons capable of boom. I wouldn't say that Ender's Game was inspiration Black Dragon, but I would say like the Halo Mac cannons were a slight. Changed Stars is our own system. It is a simple D6 6 only success, but there's a couple common ways to get rerolls with the push your luck mechanic game. It's pretty straightforward. If you've played games like Mothership or Alien RPG, you will be at home.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so there's questions about like how far should the Trinity go in enforcement, soft and hard. If there is something like an Imperial remnant out in Newsguy space, which is basically no man's land, should the
Yeah,
Trinity
and like, I think everybody knows that there more or less is some form of remnant faction.
Yeah, and like if there's something going wrong beyond the bounds of the Trinity, what obligation, if any, does the Trinity have to take care of that if they're supposed to reduce harm? But there's no open and shut case of what the Trinity should or shouldn't do with these situations, but they are just questions that the universe has. Like, things are much better now, and they're trying to build and keep better, but you've got a frontier which is already overstretched logistically, where you're trying to take care of people and their needs after some pretty botched terraforming. You've got all of these broader civilizational concerns, like how do you keep a polity running when literally when a law gets passed, if you live on the fringes, it can take like 2 years to reach you. Like, you've been doing something that's technically illegal for 2 years. Well, you didn't know, now did you? And what force and what like power and force projection looks like when it's going to take you the better part of a decade to move your fleet from one border to the other. And in that sort of a situation, even if you are like morally or ethically, oh yeah, no, you should totally expand and go start fucking shit up. Could the Trinity even survive that? Is the Trinity going to survive as it exists now? Even though things are good and they're on the up, with such a massive system with so many points of failure, it only takes one notch for a cascade effect to produce terrible repercussions, which the Human Empire learned when they bit off more than they could chew. After never losing a war, they picked the wrong fight.
Yeah, and it very much is an issue of like, the Human Empire definitely overextended. They expanded past their reasonable capabilities of defending and maintaining their position because they were built on the prospect of forever war, being a thing, and they really couldn't slow down. So it was just kind of a nightmare situation in the beginning for the Empire. But the Trinity inherited not just the Empire's, regions after decolonizing a couple and giving them back to, people who lived there before or, could reasonably lay claim to places, but they still have a very extensive remnant of, governance in addition to the Thren Federation and the Mirai Council of Queens coming into the fold now too. So the Trinity is the largest polity in the Orion's arm as of yet
Yeah, and the only, strictly
revealed.
speaking, interspecies alliance stroke polity, because like the Raskin Federation, they're very xenophilic. They're happy to have you aboard. It's not that you can't hold a position of power, but it's not like a huge group of these people came together and decided we're going to live together and we're going to have a government together. And skeptics will say this is impossible, yada yada yada. The technologies, the cultures are too incompatible. And there is, like, we make a deliberate gap in the culture. The Mirai literally live in a hive-based society with drones, and like the aristocrats are hanging out. Yeah, speaking pheromonally, like there is a broad gap, a cultural divide, and that needs to be bridged. And how is it bridged? Will it be bridged well? I think an individual Dreamweaver, which is what we call like a DM, is going to have a different take on it than we are every single time, and that's great. Like I've always brought my own takes to settings, and at the end of the day, we hand you the book. We say, "This is the book. You're going to do what you're going to do with it."
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Great answers. Thank you so much. God, I can't wait to get my copy.
Yeah, get that to you expeditiously.
Yeah, because once I get my copy, I'm definitely running at least a one shot on stream with my cast, because they need to experience this. It was such a good time.
Yeah.
Speaking of my cast, one of them wants to know when you guys are going to guest star on our Wheel of the Dice stream, play some D&D.
Hell yeah!
Oh yeah, I'm.
Whenever y'all want us.
I'm definitely down. I'll just I'll work that into the old schedule.
So right now, a campaign that was supposed to last at least another year has been reduced to another possible 7 sessions because my players bypassed like X, Y, and Z to get to the end in a beautiful way. And so I'm already working on the next campaigns because I run 2 campaigns simultaneously. They're interwoven. That's my style. I'm a glutton for punishment. But definitely would love to have you guys come play some D&D with us for sure when the new campaign kicks off.
Hell yeah! Sure, we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, to get out and do more appearances. We've been in a hibernatory state because we did a lot of finishing work while I was at a big trip to Pat's, and just like putting pedal to the metal, getting the work done was more important than anything else. So streams fell a little by the wayside as I just wrote. But we're coming off of that. We're getting ready for a Change Stars summer of many Change Stars games starting next month. So yeah, I'm down to appear on other channels, play some games. Love playing some D&D. I rarely get to be a player in D&D. I'm always the DM. So any chance to be a player, I take very, very dearly. I mean, yeah, you know the feeling.
Yeah, I've been the forever DM for 30 some years. I'm old. Get off my damn lawn.
Get off my lawn. Yeah, no, I'm just in the twinkling twilight era of that experience. I'll call you back when I've had my first decade. 7 years in.
Yeah, I've been playing D&D for 36 years.
Oh my gosh.
I will get it on break just to prove. I have the original pre-Tolkien lawsuit box set that the comics are included. That's like my prized geek possession.
Holy shit. That's prestigious.
You have the true ancient relics. We actually have an artifact section in our book, which is sort of in D&D. You have magic items and your holy avengers and your whatnots, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes sci-fi games, they struggle to recapture the idea of the magic item. And the whole idea is we have these items brimming with lore and background, and they are very powerful. Like, we don't put a price on them. The rarity is artifact. You can't buy this for anything less than a life-changing sum of money and bribes and capital and threats. Like, it's all in. And that's the spirit we want to capture. Is you're about, you're like, oh shit, you have that, really? And then it's also like a really nice
Yeah.
weapon.
You
Or
got some Waikosi mind glass? Shit.
yeah. Waikosi Mind Glass is one of the examples. There's this species that like withdrew to their home planet largely and engaged in transhuman ascension, and they took all of the technology from their ruins except the mind glass, and it's this weird conductive material which has strange properties, and if you cram it in your brain, if you're a synth, it'll literally give you more processing, which is your reroll resource, and you can apply it to all sorts of different machines. And we've run some interesting one shots that explored the possible mysteries of it.
Yes.
Cool.
One of them
Yeah.
disappeared to the void.
Yeah, but there's also stuff like cool swords, plasma projectors, visors that let you like scan the DNA and molecular structure of stuff from a kilometer away.
Wait, which one's that?
The Moose token Gardener's visor has a 1,000-meter range,
Oh, fuck.
and it acts as a chemical analyzer as well. Yeah,
Mhm.
and yeah, there's also just a fancy chipset is one of the artifacts. Fenrir Core never fully rolled out a chipset upgrade to their pulse rifles before the fall, right? So literally, you can just like crack open the back of your pulse rifle, and if you know what you're doing, take out a little chip, put in a new chip, and all of a sudden, it activates a bunch of features that were intentionally left deactivated. So a megacorp could sell the military the new chipset later.
Oh,
Yeah, the Human Empire sucked.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Oh,
the Human Empire.
sorry, we've got another couple questions from the audience. Black
Sure.
Dragon wants to know if you guys have any thoughts on the next project or if everything's still focused on Changed Stars.
I mean, I think Pat and I have both agreed that once Change Stars is out, we're both very creative people. We come up with new side products all the time, but we feel, we've taken your money, literally. I have, Tier's money in a bank account. I need to go print his book, right? So we're focused on finish the book, get it to the backers.
Yeah,
After that,
that is our
we're not
number
we're,
one priority.
we're not taking any new pendulums over our head for a little bit after that. I have plans for an adventure web, I'm calling it, kind of like an adventure module for Change Stars, other Change Stars content. But we both have projects we have to work on. As a game designer, I come up with lots of ideas and just sort of see which ones take off.
Mhm.
So a lot of minor stuff, a lot of whatever happens to be to the hand, is what we're going to be going for.
Yeah. We're
And
probably thinking like, a couple Change Stars modules, first things
yeah,
first once we do it. And then, we have talked on and off about an expansion to Change Stars. We have left in lore places to expand.
yeah,
There's a number of species that are mentioned in the book, but don't get super fleshed out because
mm,
they're not one of the like expected core gameplay species to interact with all
yeah, like
that
the
much.
bees and the cath.
Yeah, even the Moose token don't really get fleshed out all that much. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's definitely options that we can take moving forward to expand the
Yeah.
setting, and we're definitely going to do that at some point.
I'm also meaning to expand a concept that is in the game called frames, where
Mhm.
so in D&D, there's a default presumption, which of course a campaign can always veer from, which is your group of adventurers, right? In a game like Shadowrun, there's a tight conception of you are Shadowrunners. You can run other games in Shadowrun with their rules and their world, but your Shadowrunners is the default presumption everything's based around. In a game like Change Stars, what's the default presumption? Who is the party? And there's a couple of different answers to that question. One of the ones that Tier played is you're a group who happens to be at the same place at the same time when shit goes down. That's a very
Mhm.
common one for one shots in particular, where it's
Mhm.
and then who you are now suddenly is like you're looking around like, well, I know who I am and what I want. What am I going to do in this situation? How am I going to get alive? And if you cook the cards right, regardless of who the party is, they'll come together to make sure they get out alive because they need each other. But there's a situation like you are Trinity Marines. What do your rules of engagement look like when you have to equip the trank dart ammo that removes the AP from your gun, but the enemy doesn't really feel compelled to do that? What does it look like when you are having to, like man a checkpoint on Freelandia where the average person is some sort of separatist? And what does space war look like in this context? And there's like science team where you more or less do a Star Trek. You would go out in our Orchid class it's like a huge kilometer-long science ship capable of decades-long missions to go do all the Star Trek stuff. We ran a science team series of one-shots during the Kickstarter to sort of explore those ideas. And there's also like your free merchants, your plucky, Firefly kind of merchants just trying to keep heavy matter in the tank, trying to keep flying one more day, do the job, And there are Trinity Marshals, Trinity Fleet Intelligence agents trying to track down war criminals, arms dealers, illegal Gravball circuits, because Gravball, as played into the Human Empire, involved a lot of concussions to fatalities, shall we say. And some people are still thirsty for the real deal. That sort of thing. And espionage between the brewing Cold War of the Rast Confederation on one side and the Trinity on the other. And there's all of these different setups you can have. So I will probably, if I have my druthers, I'll put out a frame that's at least a dozen pages or more long on each that gives you really in-depth examples about okay, you have a party of Marines. Here's a special mechanic they get. Here's examples of the kinds of missions they'd be deployed on. I have one for free merchants all written up where it's like they also get their unique mechanic is they can ignore certain penalties in the game once per job collectively, and they activate it collectively because it's whatever your found family or cutthroat dynamic might be in this free merchant ship, you get the job done. You come together to deliver the goods, right? And that sort of a thing. And I talk about who might you do business with? What might your drop location look like? Is it in dead space? Is it on a remote planetoid? Here's the pros and cons of all that. Here's how someone could get ambushed or shanghaied in that sort of, I don't know if that's the right way to use that word, but you know what I'm saying? You might get ambushed, you might get double-crossed in a certain business dealing, right? If you don't take the proper precautions, or even if the players do, you'll just give them an early warning, right? And we talk about I get into the details of what does being a semi-gray market space merchant really look like? Where is that line? How do you know you're really in deep with unethical people? And how do you all that sort of stuff? The stuff that maybe doesn't need to just be in the book generally. We glance on all that, but one of the ideas for the post-release stuff is basically just frames that helps you say, I want to run a free merchant campaign. I want to run a crime campaign. I want to run a science team campaign. I want to run a Marine game. I want to run a Trinity Fleet Intelligence game. Yada, yada, yada. Or an espionage game at all. You could be working for the Daruni Beaks, who are the home ship Daruna's counterpart to Trinity Fleet Intelligence, right? You can play either side of the Cold War. A lot of the information is about the Trinity, but we do have locations outside the Trinity. We have Veer worlds. We have Veer fleet herds. We have Far Hive, which is a floating mega colony ship converted to be a flotilla of Mirai Ronin, who are hiveless Mirai, who have lots of problems they have to worry about. Technically part of the Mirai Council of Queens, but
they don't have a queen that they worship.
Not exactly a rosy relationship or a clear place in the society and culture, right? And we have home ships, which have basically a sovereignty bubble. If you're inside the gravity well of a home ship, you're under their laws, even if they're in Trinity space, as long as the Trinity lets that home ship in their space. There are some where they're nah, if
there
if
are
you
two
if you if
free
you
home
if you show up here, you're getting interdicted. You're gonna have a bad time. You go ahead and you stay outside.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
they're banned for ethical reasons.
Yeah, you can't human like people are not for sale, and you should not deal in thermonuclear warheads. You know, that sort of thing.
That sort of
They
thing. Yeah.
yeah, the Trinity draws a line in the sand on some stuff, and it's like, you come around here, we're gonna have a problem, partner. Even
Yeah, the
if
Wrath Confederation is very diverse in terms of member states.
yeah, they're because the Rast basically leave their home planet because they're little otter folk. They're basically an evolved sapient prey species. There are other sapient predators on their planet, and there are lots of terrible dangers. They basically got off their planet as soon as they could do mass space flight and started building home ships, and they haven't looked back. They tread the stars, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They live in their space is their home. So that resulted in, because there is no faction-like communication, a great divergence in language and culture because each home ship is an island onto itself.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. So next question from chat. Does Change Stars have any special lingo? Examples how Frack from Battlestar or Hippie Fruits from Hitchhiker's Guide.
Oh, we do.
Oh,
We do.
Deke. Do we?
Deek. Deek. Yeah, Deek is the word for rot in Thren Tling, an entire language that Pat is in the process of inventing. We have a lot of conlang stuff in Change Stars, and we try and work the words in gameably as much as possible. For example, the neon sign you'll see outside of a bar or liquor store is this like blue swirly hyolb, because it's the Thren Tling word for wine, and it's become so commonly understood across space as like, here's where the hooch is, that even if you're not like a wine store, even if you just like have beer and like liquor on tap, you slap a Hjolb outside. It doesn't matter what language you read. You don't need a visual translator to understand that's where the alcohol's at.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah. So not only do we have like, you know, like there's a couple, I think, spacer terms and stuff that we mentioned in Change Stars, and there's some lingo associated with like FTL drives, and we have a little side about, you know, during the Human Empire, this was called surf space, whereas now it is referred to as fold space. Both are common in this setting, and you know, yada yada. We do have like in setting slang and terminology and stuff, but we also have you know, at least one and I am still working on it, but by the time we um, publish some of the extra content that we got funded during the Kickstarter, namely a Thren pocket dictionary, it will be a fully fledged language that you can, you know, actually, if you so choose, learn and speak. Yeah, Frick is Deek in Change Stars. It means rot in Thren Tling, and the Thren are you know, not exclusive frugivores, but very they eat fruit a lot more than humans tend to. You know, the fruit is the centerpiece rather than meat on a Thren dish, and so rot is a very negatively connoted thing in Thren culture. So to declare rot, you're you know saying a minor expletive. Um, and there's a lot of that in addition to, you know, the the conlings that I've worked on. So there's going to be one conlang that's fully fledged, which is Threnpling, and then there's going to be like couple conscripts for the various languages of the Rast Confederation, as well as a more fleshed out iteration of one of the settings languages that I put a tiny bit of work into so far, called Scopum, which is the language of the Rast homeship Skibadop, as well as Daruna.
Very cool.
So basically, we'll have enough language that you can both toss it in willy-nilly to your gameplay and draw signs in these actual languages with these actual scripts that we've made. And you know, your players can get added extra bonus from, you know, looking through the book and being like, oh, I know what that sign means. Oh, we're in danger, you know.
Very cool. All right, it's time for us to take our break. We're going to take 10 minutes, get our beverages and all that, because my caffeine stream has too much blood in it, so need to rectify that.
Oh yeah, no, I
Um,
feel you. Do we have time for me to run inside and grab a coffee?
yeah, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back in 10.
Woo! All right.
so much for hanging out while we took our break, got our snickety snacks, our favorite beverages, and handled our business. Today, we are talking with Lee and Pat, the creators of Changed Stars, one of the most epic sci-fi TTRPGs that you will ever encounter, in my humble opinion. Again, thank you guys for being here. Definitely appreciate it. Before we get started, someone mentioned that they're getting ads. If you subscribed using Amazon Prime, you have to resubscribe monthly. It does not automatically renew.
The old Prime sub.
Yep, the old Prime sub. And we do want to thank our partners in this endeavor, Level Up Dice, for all your sexy dice needs. You can go through our portal to check out their dice that will be put up in chat. That is bit.ly LUD Will of the Dice, all one word. Bit.ly LUD Will of the Dice. All right, so back to it. The big question everybody wants to know: when do we get our stuff?
When you get the stuff, yeah. That's a great question. Obviously, there's been a delay. These books were supposed to be out by now. We kept it nebulous to like early 2022, right? We were hopeful this would have been like 2 months ago. That's not really how it shook out. I can tell you, I have a tracking sheet, and I know how far we are in every single section of the book. And as you can see with the layout preview that I sent you guys, and is in the latest Kickstarter update, like it's there. It's there. It's getting there, but it's not there yet. It's going to come out in 3 phases. We start changing Star Silver to backers. Going to PDF. There's going to be fully laid out PDF. It will have all of the content of the game, but it will be our first run. And if there's egregious mistakes, terrible typos, whatever that we will miss because our eyes are so used to the text, we hope a broader audience will see it. After that, when Changed Stars
Silver, by the way, I feel like mentioning, we are going to do editing.
Yeah, and we've already done a lot of editing, but more editing will happen. When that's done and Change Stars goes gold, we will send a print-ready version both as full PDF release to the world, to the backers and to people who would like to buy it on a storefront. And then we will put that out to our domestic US printer. I think they were talking about a month turnaround. Then there's a question of how shipping and printing have been affected by COVID since we got our quote. I think that we're in a better state shipping wise now, so it's probably on par with what you'd normally expect if you are outside of the continental United States. One important note, like we will collect extra money for shipping when the book goes out. And then that's going to depend on what the shipping's like at the time. If we look at the prices and they're just like gouging at the time, we might hold, we might go, it depends. But when that's going to happen, I've been, after being wrong once, it feels a little like tempting fate. But the plan is Change Stars Silver should be hitting inboxes by summer. So like the end of May, right? You should have a laid out version of Change Stars. The only thing about Silver is it might not have the final version of every piece of art. It might have like a blocked section where that's like art goes here, right?
We'll be trying very hard to get everything that can get into the book for this Silver.
But it will be text complete. It will be just for backers, and we are going to try and rush to gold as soon as we can. But at the end of the day, I mean, my first real role-playing game experience that I ran for a significant time and became like the campaign that launched my Forever group, more or less, was Space 1889. That game, which I just picked up off a shelf that somebody had brought over once. That game came out in 1988. These things live forever, much longer than I will. This is my legacy. So this is our legacy, Pat and I. So at the end of the day, I don't want to put a number on it because I'm not going to pull the trigger on printing this book until I feel like I can really tell you, like, yeah, no, I think this is the game I made, and I'm willing to make my peace with it. Because we can change stars once it's gone gold. We can obviously push updates. We can publish errata, but there's a limit to that. And I think a lot about like what are the most OP builds in Change Stars. Like I was thinking before I got here on how you can get the most natural armor possible. If you play a new squad, you get polycarb abs, and then you get subdermal armor installed. And it's like, well, yeah, at the far end of unlikely events in a certain build, you could probably have an incredibly strong character in some regards. And do I want this to be a game where I've clipped the wings just so to make it impossible for the people who are going to wind up in that scenario that's going to be felt by every player? Or do I let the average player just maybe think about that, but not really have to worry about it and let the edge cases exist? And there's all of these existential questions, which when you're a dungeon master, you play it by ear. But when you're a setting system publisher, you've got to, the die must be cast. You have to create the baseline, and you have to be willing to get on Sharon's ferry with it. You know, that's the coin I'm paying the ferryman with, and it's hard. So yeah, like a month or two before Change Star Silver, hopefully, you know, we're looking at, if I had to put a date to it, middle of the year, I think is when we're going to be putting out the book, and we're going to
Very cool.
we'll be
If
around.
I may add to this somewhat, it's going to take me 3 months to finish the current art lineup. I think there's 80 pieces. That's about 3 months work for me. So that's where I'm at. That's
Yeah.
when, you know, we'll have all the art we need for the gold, and then it's just an issue of making sure that it's all laid out. Because
Yeah.
the words, they're going to be finished, as we said, you know,
I
month
mean,
and a half
I
from
mean, the
now.
words, particularly the rules, have been done for like, you know,
Yeah, the words
going
are
on
done.
a year and a half now. Like the game is
The words
feature
are
complete.
done.
The game has been and remains feature complete. The rest of this is the parts of the tabletop industry that it's our first time touching. You know.
Yeah.
Understand.
Yeah. So that's more or less where we are. And yeah, I would say a cautiously optimistic middle of year release is what we're expecting. A Q2
For
release.
the full printed book.
For the physical book, they will absolutely. Yeah, we'll be having PDFs and inboxes before then. Change Star Silver won't be for sale; it'll be for the backers and for playtesters, and that's just because it's going to be an incomplete version. Basically, it's not going to have all the art. It's going to be our first run off the press. By the time something's in layout, it's very hard to change the text.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, if it's truly called for. But yeah, I mean, my average dev stream is running my head against a written section saying, okay, but this is a little confusing. How can I say this in less words more clearly? Like, and we're getting to esoterica, like the most advanced form of hacking in Change Stars. The section is called Gates, Nodes, and Keys. And it talks about how we conceptualize digital systems for the purposes of hacking. And for most games, it's not necessary or only useful as saying, well, your hacker's already obtained the key, so they can open the door. It's the facility only has one digital key. It's fine. You know? You can think of it almost like the red and blue keys in Doom on some level. So in a way, it can be used to hurry up gameplay and cut down on repetitive tests. But in another way, it can get very deep, not Shadowrun levels deep, but sufficient that there is a serious hacking layer, and we have this thing called a node map. And that section, like as is, like I technically speaking gave you all the information, but I've rewritten it 3 times now to make it better. But we've overdone all the major mechanical overhauls, like space combat. We went through 4 editions, and it required a designer to come help me see with fresh eyes to make the final rendition. I'm very proud of it. I'm going to be honest with you, and this is a little harsh. I don't think any tabletop role-playing game has good space combat. And I have spent years harvesting opinions and looking at people's examples of good space combat. And I truly believe we have the winner chicken dinner on this one.
Change Stars'
So
space rules are tight.
So
can't wait to see.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be amazing. But I'm hanging my collar on this game because the only other thing I've made, you know, nobody but friends and family really bought, and it's a bit of a mess. So this is my sophomore outing. I've had my freshman misfire, so as a designer, in theory, this is supposed to be the gravy. So we will see how it comes up. But that's where we are in terms of the release of the game and where we are right now.
We need a playtester.
Hell yeah, we're planning Change Stars summer. We'll be happy to have you on. I know some people were. I know you saw we're planning to do. I'm playing a mecha one shot on a Veer world actually, where there's been a split in the world herd over policy on the Trinity and the commune, because the commune is still run by despite all of the bickering and the infighting in the corporations and the human empire, they needed a strong logistical network or space war would fall apart. You just can't flub that over corporate nonsense, right? So the interplanetary logistics were all handled by a system formerly called the Father Network. They've all been converted over to the Mother Network now. But it's the same logistics network. It's just rather than saying provision the campaign, it says provide the best quality of life and ensure that the most resources are best dispersed on these criteria across the commune. So the logistics AI network still exists, just heavily reprogrammed, right? And there is a thread raised among the Veer, he's taken the name Ironheart, who believes that actually the war isn't over until the last robot responsible for designing the war is crushed. And he is talking about what could become like a sweeping crusade is a charged word, but a sweeping onslaught out of your space, which is nestled inside of commune space, and to just try and absolutely fuck up the mother network. And it's an internal struggle because the world herd knows that this means war and sorrow and strife. So it's a civil war, and the players play the auxiliary core of the world herd because most of the mechas are not. Most of the CCUs they have still left over from the Empire they haven't reshaped the cockpits to be Veer compatible. So a lot of them are volunteers, people happen to be living there, and that is the fight for one of the upcoming ones. I posted on Twitter about do you like Gundam and Mecha? Do you want to play some Changed Stars? I might have the game for you. So Ironheart is that one, but I'm going to come up with more. We have lots of stuff. CCUs you can think about kind of like power loader scale, kind of like forklifts in space. Most of them are made to do manual work, but some of them are made for combat, particularly under the Human Empire. So you have that option. You've got jet boosters on the Human Empire Navy's Stellar Assault Chassis or the Hensack. So
yeah, I responded to that saying Stompy robots and Change Stars. I'm in.
Yeah, we'll get you in. We'll get you on the front. We'll see how the horrors of war play out. It's an interesting one because it's military and Change Stars, but it's not a Trinity Force or against the Trinity Force. So those ROE don't apply. And the Veer are fans of a generalist rule, fans of indirect fire. So it's going to be quite a messy battlefield. Yeah, that's the drift.
Yeah, the Veer inherited, by virtue of being a species that was in Napoleonic development, technological development, taken forcibly by the human empire out into the world, and then in the fall of the human empire, inherited a lot of space territory.
They had their revolutions alongside the revolution, the rebels. And when the Trinity showed up, they were like, "Would you like to join?" They were like, "No, thanks. We're good. We're in charge now. Bye bye." And the Trinity. Nobody. The Sister Species Coalition at the time, we're not going to be like, "Oh, we're going to forcibly recolonize you." That's not what they're about. They seeded the world.
It's quite the opposite. They
took humans off of the worlds that they had stolen from the people they tried to fuck up and kill, and were like, "No, we'll put you somewhere else, but you can't stay here and continue to murder people, or you can stay there, and this is the new government now." And lots of humans were fine with that. There were humans who participated in the Veer revolutions, and now they're part of the world herd. Yeah.
So what has been the absolute favorite part about this whole project?
That's a great question. I would say
favorite part of the last 2 years of my life.
For me, I would say it was definitely the experience of creating something and getting to see other people enjoy it. Like for me, the joy of the game designer is watching someone else play it and seeing them have fun and getting to see other people running Change Stars for more and more people, seeing the rules that I crafted operate as they should or outside of intended parameters, creating fun stories. And that's the dream. That's my joy as a game designer. That's what I'm in it for. This is my vocation. I would do this if I earned $0 from it ever. I need to eat and hopefully at some point get healthcare. So we're hoping for much higher than zero number, but I would still be making games regardless because it's truly what I feel called to do. And I think that seeing it provide joy for others is just bon appetit. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, for me, it's just this is the largest project that I've ever been associated with. We raised, well beyond our intended goal. Many people have seen it. Many people are anticipating it. And that's part of why the pressure's on to make this a good delivery and to make our names as designers, world builders, artists, etc. And I think that's the joy, also a little bit the stress, but the joy of having worked on Change Stars and continuing to work on Change Stars.
Very cool.
Yeah, and for my part, I was gonna say something banal, but now I feel a little selfish about what I was gonna say, considering that whole spiel. But I mean, I actually genuinely must agree with Lee that the best part of this easily is getting to see people live in this world that I've helped create and color for just general audiences, and seeing seeing people play the game and enjoy the setting and interact with the cultures and all the marvelous things that they come up with. And for my own part of this, incorporating into the lore a lot of, like, we've played this game pretty much every week for 2 years, almost, and, there's been a lot of, games in this setting. Like, we've been playing 2 games a week at points, and, just there is a lot of the lore that was, created in the heat of sessions, and, building this shared universe with the people I enjoy playing with and, the people I love is definitely the best aspect of this. And on a side note, what I was originally going to say before Lee said all that eye-opening stuff is my second favorite part of this whole process is getting to see my own growth as an artist and as a member of the TTRPG community. Uh, over the course of creating this universe, I have personally grown a lot as an artist. I mean, right now I'm breaking into digital art, so you'll be seeing some colored pieces in the book, hopefully, unless the printers tell us that that's a no-no. um,
We are
you'll
running
see.
it. It is a book that we are like paying to run in color, but it'll be a question of how many color pieces does
Yeah,
not break the bank.
that is what I'm sorry. I phrased that in a way that might indicate to people that there won't be any color in the book, and that is not the case. It is just an issue of how many of these paintings I could stick in there. But yeah, there's going to be colored illustrations now. But I have I've been learning art over the course of my relationship with Lee and creating Diesel Shot. But I am I can go back and I can look at the things that I was making for Change Stars when it started a year ago or 2 years ago, and I can see, originally I was just doing sketches. Then I broke into black and white inked pieces, which I knew would be more professional for the book, and that's what we're sticking with. We're keeping the OSR ink paint or ink and painting vibe, um, which distinguishes us in many respects artistically from a lot of current pieces, which was unintentional but a welcome niche to find ourselves in. And it's just really cool to go back and see how I was drawing 2 years ago, how I was drawing 1 year ago, and then look at the pieces that I'm putting out now, and think to myself, oh my gosh, this is so much crisper. The anatomy is so much better. I'm really paying more attention to appropriate details, and I am blacking out the shadows more appropriately, and I've decided to put detail here where it's more visible and important to the viewer, and less detail where it doesn't matter. And my designs are a lot cooler, my lines are smoother, etc., etc. And I can look at that, and I can look at the first stuff that I was making for Change Stars, and I can genuinely see the progression of my art, which is just really cool. So that's a kind of more personal aspect of my favorite thing. But really, my favorite part of this whole experience has been playing the game with people, and developing the world along with my friends, and incorporating concepts that my friends enjoy, and um, just sharing a loom upon which to weave the canvas that has become Change Stars.
Awesome. Yeah, it's always amazing when you look at yourself and see your personal growth, when you have milestones that you can, you know, compare it against and see how far you've come. I think both answers are absolutely amazing and speak to the awesomeness of both of you as peoples, which is one of the things that I like about this whole thing, and one of the reasons I wanted you guys on here so people could see how awesome you are. Guys, questions, make sure you get them in the chat. You know how this works.
If you want to see the art, by the way,
Throw
you
it
can
out. We're
check out my
happy.
Twitter account
Happy to hear.
or the Change Stars Twitter account. All the art that we've been sharing is, unless it looks like a pixel art map, which I actually made the pixel art assets for, probably for the most part. All the art that you'll see on the Stars Changed account, and most of the art you'll see on my own account, is from me. And it's a lot of it's going to be the official art in the book. So
Yes,
you can get
and
an
you
early. Yeah. Sorry,
in
go
one
ahead.
of the backer rewards that will probably wind up for Sunday TTRPG at some point is a digital token pack of like the different like faces and characters that are in all the art that Pat's done so far. So yeah, you'll have lots of opportunities to see it. And if you do like the pixel art, we have most of the pixel art maps we have draw from 2 of the DTRPG packs we have on sale.
Oh yeah, we could toss a link to those too if you want.
Apocalyptic Americana and Marines Megacorps
Megacorps,
and
Marines,
Monsters.
and Monsters.
Yeah, but it's been an art journey, to be sure, an art-filled journey. So if you
Those
want to
are
look at
some of
pretty,
the best.
indeed, if you want to look at pretty pictures, you can do it till you go blue in the face. We've got such a backlog. I mean, I'm probably gonna have to like shove. We'll probably have to shove ownership of some of the images at this point because, like, I think Pat's blocks are filling up. We've got so much uploaded.
Oh, for those of you listening on podcast, the links are twitter.com/long_spider and twitter.com/stars changed. There you can go check out the art, see the amazing work. Like I said, I've got nothing but good. And like I said, I am a harsh person. It's hard to impress me. I've been around TTRPG since I was 8 years old. I'm 44 now. I don't know. I don't keep track. It's just a number. But I'm hard to impress, and you guys really impressed me with the one shot. So
Thank you.
I
By
was
the
sad that the
way,
Kickstart was already closed, that I didn't get the back, but I did pre-order.
yeah, that's wonderful, and you'll be getting your book. I have a question for you actually, which is, what was your favorite part of Hard Passage?
Getting to hack the other girl's phone that was recording stuff and put kitten videos on it.
Oh yeah,
She was trying to
oh
record stuff, and my friend did not want to be seen. It's like, no, no. You can't have that information.
phone to phone, slate to slate freaking, yeah.
Yeah. Black Dragon says that you guys mentioned that Starship battle components of other RPGs were pretty much crap. Can you elaborate on how you improved yours in
Yes.
Changed Stars?
So allow me to explain what I consider to be the primary problem with most spaceship combat. One, it centers on a map in which there is only one moving party. Two, it is its whole own game you have to learn separately. And so when it comes up, people are like, oh, do you really want to go learn that right now? Not really. So, it fails in usability and gameability, and it fails conceptually as being interesting because for most people, when a battle map situation comes up, you want to be able to run around on the map, There's a couple of potential ways to solve this, like, oh, well, everyone gets their own strike fighter. But because of the nature of the Change Stars setting, that like those easy outs don't really work for us. So I went through a few different variations. In one, the primary focus was literally just the spaceship you were in and moving around the rooms that you were inside of, the rooms of the spaceship. And we went to some other iterations as well. And what we've landed on here is there are basically what you could think of as like a card game play board, like as an example of how you can do it, where it's like, here are like the 5 primary parts of the ship that exist and can get hit. You're in one of them, and there are actions you can take in them. Normally, you can move between them freely, but if shit's going fucked with your gravity or whatever, you might have to make a maneuver test. It's a whole thing, and each person only really needs to know going into the space combat one station's potential actions, which are not that hard to present to them because there's normally 3 to 4 of them. And we spice up the I roll, I shoot, which is another problem that we had with a game like Stars Without Number, where you're all playing part. It's like you've zoided together a role playing game character. You all have one AC, you all have one kind of attack, and you just do different parts of it. But that's interesting when you have all of it yourself. Less so when you're forced to be a little bit. So there's like 3 different ways to shoot at someone, and it has an impact, and it has a different reason you might do it. Do you really want to be sure you knock out part of their ship? Are you willing to empty your all your volleys on just a broad range that causes them lots of fractures, a type of like more or less delayed damage? Do you just want to be sure you get a solid hit in and you can do as much damage as possible and take a random hit location? There's all of these factors, and there's all of the stuff happening. Your ship's getting damaged. There's fractures popping up, which the next time you take damage, you're gonna the whole ship's gonna take damage based on how many fractures are left as they pop. And you have all these jobs to run around and do and fix. You have things on the ship, like you can spend power on different parts to make it work. You can put AI processing into different parts to make them work better. And all of that comes to the fore when you are working together. And individually, my goal was you'd be able to have people on their second game of Changed Stars play a spaceship combat. As long as you have it like very well delineated and the Dreamweaver really knows the system, I think you can do a first session spaceship combat. But it is a question of like handing out. So the way the game improves overall is by making it an approachable amount of depth, which can functionally do whatever it is you want to do. There's an optional battle map component with quote unquote encounter units, so we don't worry about how long literally the space distance is. There are lots of different weapons and modules for your spaceship. There are lots of different spaceships, but their mechanics really tend to only come out in what the hard points are, right? Like you have your power, you have your thrust, and then you have your hard points. There's hull, there's armor, but that's the bread and butter. And all of it is like a line item you can look at and understand, not unlike D&D 5e stat blocks. They reprint a lot of information in those. They recur a lot of information in those, and they break it out so that rather than saying this is a betentacled creature, it uses the betentacled creature rules. It's got like a discrete attack you understand and has repercussions written out there. And that's the philosophy I came to it with, even if it's not fully reprinted, like the way the callback system work. You have your spaceship, you have their spaceship. You get more than 2 spaceships in a fight, to be honest, or only one, and then you're going up against like micrometeor asteroids or whatever, impacts, issues that you run into in space, radiation storms, and the overall improvement is just, I think you can run this in your first session or 2 of Changed Stars, And I think it doesn't sacrifice the depth that will make it fun, but it's not its whole own game. There's basically a bespoke action list for each part of the ship that you can go to. It's got 2 to 3 actions, and you don't need to totally understand how everybody else is doing their shit to do your own shit. And that's
Very
that's the beauty. Also, the crisis system, whereby every time your ship gets hit. I mean, the spaceship is a delicate piece of machinery, and a torpedo just blew up in it. Something has gone wrong. You have to address the crisis, and crises are a bit of work on the Dreamweaver's part coming up with them. But we have a strong list of examples, and we talk about like the mechanical fallout of them and how to solve them. And it's a sense it's something that I believe engages every kind of player build, whether they are a social face or somebody else who doesn't really have a clear-cut role on a spaceship in terms of like mechanics, right? Everybody can go and do something, and there are many times where just like it's about the action economy. And because you can split in your turn's initiative your actions and movement between the party, there's lots of you go here and do this, then I'll do this. I think it has the positive elements of a co-op board game while minimizing the negative elements of a co-op board game while still being a tabletop role-playing game. And it was a bit of a coup to pull off, and most of the earlier versions were just ultimately too complicated. They were like what I was describing, where you really had to go learn your own game of it.
Mhm.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So I gotta ask, Dreamweaver, where'd the term come from?
That's all Lee.
So in
I
Space
wipe my
18,
hands
in
with it.
Space 1889, the DM is called the referee, and I kind of like I don't know if I come up with Dreamweaver beforehand or not, but I was like absolutely like that's nonsense. I need the most like bullshit and effusive title possible. So I came up with what I thought was like the most heady possible like role for a DM, which is the Dreamweaver. You are weaving the collective dream that the group is experiencing, right? You are creating this fictitious reality mutually throughout the group. You are it encapsulates the nature of the experience and the act and art of it, because you are doing something artisanal, right? You are crafting something, and it is intentionally a bit silly, and it was a word that predated Changed Stars, so I didn't come with it for Changed Stars in particular. But I do think it unironically holds up, and we literally call them the Dreamweaver. We have the Dreamweaver guide section at the back of the book. That's the rub. We kind of took it around with it. Pat infamously thinks it's silly in her role. I have the Dreamweaver role in the Discord, and she has the Nightmare role in the Discord. So yeah, we have fun with it.
You gotta have fun with it. You gotta have fun with it.
I'm the Grinch. I hate fun. No silliness. Bad.
No fun allowed.
You folks can have fun over there in your silly little towns full of silly people. I have this cave, and it is nice, and I shall stay here. Oh, winter long.
Indeed. Yeah. Bye, Wolster.
Bye, Welster.
Yeah.
It always sucks when you have to go back to work.
That's a schmood. Unless your work is making Changed Stars.
Mm. It can
but
be
I
a bit of
also
a
think
Living the
grind.
dream.
sucks.
I mean, it is living the dream, and I'm incredibly lucky. We're very lucky, and we're very blessed that all of this has happened for us. I don't take it granted for a second, but it can
Mhm.
be. It can definitely be, bring the grindstone, sharpening like an axe to really find the best way that I don't think dilutes the game at all to explain something. Like
Guys. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt.
yeah, like I was going back and forth infinitely on whether or not vehicles, not even spaceships, but just regular vehicles, should have both a stat to describe how well they handle and how fast they go as different modifiers for different kinds of piloting tests. I didn't do that. There's just one, but there is a speed description. So like it's always a question of like how much fine detail you're going into versus how much is really useful for the Dreamweaver. How much are you gonna need to bring to play, what's going to feel like it's holding you back by being there. Because obviously, I run D&D, I dismiss things all the time. I'm like, no, that's not how I want to do it, blah, 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 But there could be a table culture that feels more bound to the rules in the book, And there could be a table culture which gives more freedom in liminal spaces at the edge, where they're like, here's a suggestion. So I try and keep conscious of that, and I try and keep a vibe where we're not hanging you out to dry, because there are games that can appear simple but are actually just offloading a massive amount of work on the Dreamweaver, right? On the DM. And there can be games that are seemingly complex, but actually pretty straightforward. They just like really nailed down every bit, and we're like this. We're trying to run a fine line, and I think that we're doing a pretty decent job of it. I'd say we're doing a Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 job of grinding the rail.
Thank you guys. From what I have seen and from where I've been following everything, I think you guys are doing awesome and are going to have a ton of success. Like I said, I can't wait to put it on my shelf, and my shelf is small. There's not a lot on that shelf, so it'll be a good, fun, good company. Unfortunately, my work has already called twice because I do have a day job. So we're going to have to cut today's episode just a little short because I got to go earn that money. Before we leave, guys, just let people know who you are, where they can find you on the social medias.
Yeah, we are collectively between Diesel Shot and Chat. We have our own tabletop streaming channel. We have Castles of Changed Stars there, and D&D every Monday night, 8:30 p.m. through 12:30 Eastern. I'm Quadcore QUADKORPS on Twitter. Pat is long_spider on Twitter, and we are Stars Changed for Changed Stars on Twitter. And yeah, we're out. We're on the net, and we put out a lot of content. Pat puts out a lot of art. I post some teasers of the rules and lore, and look for this game everywhere games are sold, and eventually us on the East Coast con circuit with hardbacks if you would like to buy the leftovers from the print run of the Kickstarter. That's that.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you next time. I am Tier the DM, world's okayest DM. You can find me on Twitter at tier_the_DM. And remember, if someone doesn't know, don't cast aspersions, cast guidance.
Neat.